Hello, this is Don Mitchell. I'm delighted that you've decided to learn about the communication stall that's covered in Chapter 6 of the 2000% Solution, the book that teaches you how to accomplish at least 20 times more with the same or less time, effort, and resources. Now, wouldn't that be nice? That would take your work week down to just a few hours, wouldn't it? Or you could, in fact, work, perhaps a full day and accomplish more than twice as much. Wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, the communication stall is one of the most fundamental ones that keeps individuals and organizations from being more effective. Obviously, two people can accomplish more than one person can, but only if the two people work in cooperation. If instead they're involved in some sort of a tug of war where they're trying to negate one another's efforts or accidentally cancel out what one another is doing, then in fact the result is to get less accomplished than what an individual can accomplish. So you might ask yourself, how could that possibly occur? Well, certainly not intentionally. It's normally not the case where organizations or individuals are trying to cancel out their effectiveness. However, there are a number of circumstances under which that can occur. The first is when communications are incomplete. And what I mean by incomplete is when someone is missing an important piece of information about what must be done. I saw that involved in a recent class that I've been holding, in which I gave people homework assignments, copies of the homework assignments, and then demonstrated that we would be discussing the questions in the homework assignments after each class. Because I'd been so good in handing out these materials so people would take them home for their homework, many of them just assumed I would give them a second copy during the next lesson so that they wouldn't have to carry them back and forth. And so, in fact, they would arrive and look rather puzzled and would not quite understand what we were talking about because they didn't have the materials in front of them. So I would once again make copies available, but they didn't learn. And obviously, the problem was that I had not emphasized here are your materials for your homework this week. Be sure and bring them back next week with your answers filled out. Then perhaps more people would have had less difficulties. But so, as always, the responsibility is on the communicator to be sure that all of the information is provided. And I make more than my share of mistakes in this regard. So I'm a good person to talk about how you can improve. Anyway, as we consider this whole thing, there's a second problem that can occur, which is in fact where the communications are in conflict with one another. For example, it's not unusual for someone to make a broad proclamation, the CEO of the company, for example, and say, from now on, we're going to do this. And then, of course, what happens about 6 weeks later, a new proclamation comes along that says, oh, we're going to do this. Well, are we going to do this or are we going to do this? But if the two are not complementary, or if they in fact are in opposition to each other, then the poor staff is totally confused. And of course, since the communicator is very proud of what she or he has said at that point in time, they're very unlikely to be making it obvious that they would like to have questions for clarification. And so as a result, you'll have a situation where people may do neither one, or in fact, half will do the first one, or half will do the second, or alternatively, everybody will be very obedient and they will stop doing the first one so they can do the second one as soon as that one shows up. It's all hard to tell. I have often seen examples of this maximum confusion. One of my favorite experiences was taking a tour of a very well run retail operation that was very proud of all the things it had done to streamline its distribution so that it was using barcodes to keep track and to generate all kinds of information for the accounting system, as well as to reorder goods and so forth. And this was at a time when this was a brand new idea. And so we went to a local store, and the chief financial officer led us through. along with the controller, as well as with the rest of the financial staff and some of the IT people. As we went through, what we discovered was that in this store, yes, they were using all of the new processes, but yes, they were also using all of the old processes because it had been unclear to them that they were supposed to really stop doing it. So in essence, they had doubled the workload by putting this improvement in place. So you always have to check to be sure that the communication has been received as it's intended. And also, you often are going to discover that you have created conflicts. And when you do that, all you can do is apologize, explain what you really meant to have happen, and go on from there. A great thing to do is to have someone review your communication before you do it. Ideally, someone who is expected to use that communication. And when they finish reviewing it, ask them to tell you what it is they intend to do. And if it isn't, of course, the right thing, then you know you have an issue and you'll need to go forward really from there. Okay, so we have all of these sources of miscommunication. Another one is where we have a situation, and this is very subtle. So I'm going to have to try to demonstrate this in this video, and hopefully you'll get the message. But where I say, this is the most important thing that we have to do. But while I'm doing that, I'm shaking my head no. And the way most people are going to remember that communication is he doesn't really mean it. Or some people may even interpret that as he means that this is unimportant. In fact, negating what it is that the words themselves say. Another example is where we can be talking about something where we want to encourage a certain kind of behavior, but we do it in a way that kind of conveys the wrong sense. For example, I might be encouraging you to be kind to our customers and be considerate. So, but as I do it, I might say, "No, whatever you do, I want to be sure you're kind and considerate to our customers." Well, obviously, I'm being just the opposite to the poor person who's watching this, including you. And the message is going to come across as that we should be harsh and tough and so forth, not that we should be kind. So I think another example is it's just in terms of behavior. I was struck by this because a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to go around and visit large numbers of chief executive officers at America's largest companies. And this was because I was doing an annual article for Chief Executive Magazine about who were the most effective and most, well-performing CEOs in the country. And of course, this was something the CEOs would love to be recognized for. So if I called up and said, well, I'm doing this article for Chief Executive Magazine, you did well, could I come talk to you? They would all say, oh, well, yes, of course. And, any time I wanted to come was fine. And if they could facilitate in any way, they would. Well, the exception was a very well-run company, Southwest Airlines. And I knew a number of the executives at Southwest Airlines, so I was rather surprised when they sent me back a polite letter saying, well, Don, we'd love to help you, but we just really were too busy. So I followed up and I said, well, just out of curiosity, kind of what is it that's keeping you so busy? And they said, well, one of the reasons that we're successful is we spend a lot of time with our employees, listening to them, trying to help them find solutions to their problems. And to do this, we go around to each of our operations centers and we meet with everyone from flight attendants to maintenance people to pilots to everybody in between. And in the course of doing this takes a lot of time. It's several days a week. So as much as we'd love to talk to you, it's much more important that we talk to our employees. Well, I said to myself, these are the people, obviously, who should be described as most effective in this area because they're actually taking it seriously. The contrast is I often read stories about airline executives, and at one time, executive of a very well-known airline, at a time when it was having cutbacks and so forth, was famous for arriving with a staff of 30. They would take over the entire first class section of every flight they were on, sit there relaxing, having drinks. Meanwhile, the flight attendants are working very hard and back. And all the customers are sort of saying, well, gee, why is it that we don't get treated as well? They could at least, send us a bag of peanuts here in the back. And of course, that wouldn't happen. By contrast, I have been on flights or executives of other airlines, hardworking airlines trying to be effective, where the senior executives, pitched in, we're cleaning the cabin, we're passing out the peanuts and so forth. And obviously, I drew from that conclusion. I'm sure the other customers as well as the staff did. And these people were serious. They were walking their talk. They weren't just saying, all of you do this, but me, I'm different. I'm special. And we have to kind of do this. And I think as we look at the kind of leaders that we look up to, they're the ones who do the things that we think they should do, as well as the things that they're telling us that we should do. And then we can be inspired by doing that. And if that comes as a harsh thought, think about the last time that you did something and to demonstrate good practice, and you noticed later that other people were voluntarily doing the same thing. Well, if that's not happening, it may be because you're not demonstrating that or take seriously what it is that needs to be taken into account. I'm often struck when I go and talk to senior executives how little they know about what their customers think about what's going on. And that's because they don't talk to their customers. You might think, well, how could they not talk to the customers? Well, first of all, a lot of the staff doesn't want them to talk to the customers because if there are problems, that can be an issue for a career to have the senior executive find out that the customers are unhappy. So there'll be a lot of effort to sort of keep that away. And so if someone actually calls the CEO's office, in most companies, the information will be filtered out in some way that it won't actually ever get to the CEO and may not even get to the CEO's assistant. And beyond that, it's really not pleasant to talk to an angry customer. And so many leaders really don't want to talk to an angry customer. I can tell you on those rare occasions when, I've goofed up or our organization has goofed up in serving someone, it was not fun to go in there and to hear about it. And yet that was an essential part of encouraging me to make the changes that need to be made, to understand what went wrong, and to sincerely apologize and to tell customer what I intend to do differently. And when I was willing to do that, customers were very kind in terms of giving me another chance. Now, in some cases, I goofed up the other chance too, but at least I got another chance. I certainly learned from the experience, and we all sort of need that. So, in the communication stall in the 2000% solution, we talk a lot about communicating incompletely, but we don't talk enough about probably listening and hearing what's going on. In particular, I think one form of listening that isn't listening at all is just observing people using your product or people using your service to see what they do, and then adjusting accordingly. For example, for many years, my consulting firm produced extremely detailed, very interesting to me reports about information we generated about the institutional investors who own shares in our clients' companies. And in the course of doing this, there are all kinds of things that we could use this for. Having done this for a long time, I had an outsider contact my clients and say, what are the things that you use and how do you use them that Don's organization sends you? And what we discovered was that no one ever used these reports. Well, it turned out about 40% of the effort of doing the assignment for our clients was involved in creating these reports. And since nobody used them, we stopped providing them, and no one ever complained. And of course, that enabled us to price more competitively and give better service in the parts that people did use. So be sure that communications are a two-way street, that you're aware not only of your mistakes going out, but of the things that you're not paying attention to that are happening on the other end of the communication. So I thank you for listening. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to speaking with you in future videos about the 2000% solution. So goodbye for now. Take care.